Howdy folks, welcome to our summer webinar series. This is going to be the first of a series of 4 webinars that IC Consult is doing with One Identity. And this first webinar is going to cover cybersecurity as a cost of doing business. This is going to include things like reducing business risk, reducing ongoing costs, compliance, and enabling the business to pursue new revenue opportunities. We'll start off with introductions. We'll talk a little bit about how the business views cybersecurity and cybersecurity as a cost of doing business. We'll discuss cost drivers, what really drives up the cost of a cybersecurity program, things including redundant software, manual processes, technical debt, and ways to prioritize those costs and measure risks. We'll also discuss ways of calculating and demonstrating ROI for cybersecurity investments, and how to build a business case for the executive level, C-suite, and to really drive a case for the business investments. My name is Max Borchert. I'm a director with our advisory practice here at IC Consult, and I have with me here Michael Govek. Mike, do you want to take it away?
Sure, thanks Max. I'm Michael Govek with IC Consult. I'm the IGA product lead. A little bit about IC Consult. We are the largest IAM only professional services firm in the world. We have just under 1,000 consultants, and we have offices in 18 locations. Max, why don't you start us off by talking about the cost of cybersecurity?
Sure, happy to. So when we think about the cost of cybersecurity, it's important that cybersecurity organizations think about cybersecurity as a cost of doing business. And any investment made within the cybersecurity space should be seen as something that's going to be growing or helping with one of these 4 pillars that you see on your screen. So this will include things like automation and reducing ongoing costs. This is a strong area for most identity and IGA programs. Think about things like automated provisioning, automated deprovisioning, access requests, and really, the ability to provide someone the appropriate access that they need to do their job from day one. We'll also talk about compliance and regulatory obligations. Obviously, this is a huge driver for cybersecurity programs. And these things can come either from within the business or outside of the business, right? So this could be, compliance regulations, but it also could be things like internal audit, preparing for M&A, those sorts of activities as well. Of course, reducing business risk is a core pillar for any cybersecurity program. And within the identity space, things like automated deprovisioning, right? So removing someone's access when they leave your organization, things like access requests or access certifications and access reviews, all these areas contribute to reducing the business risk. And lastly, allowing you to pursue new opportunities. So, one way or an important way to communicate some of these things to folks within the cybersecurity program, as well as to leadership within your business, is that cybersecurity should be seen as a way to enable the business to pursue new opportunities. This could include things like preparing your business for mergers and acquisitions, or it could be seen as something as simple as allowing your workers to work remotely. Regardless of what the new revenue streams are or new ways of operating are, it's important that cybersecurity is seen as enabling the business to safely pursue these new opportunities. And Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the cost drivers that we typically see during cybersecurity programs?
Certainly. So what's driving up the cost of cybersecurity? It starts with technical debt. Companies that don't have a robust IAM program, that do not have a strategic roadmap in place, are going to be constantly in a reactive state. That's going to lead to redundant software. They're going to be purchasing software to solve a need instead of using, the core functionality and feature set of their existing software. And this trickles down to manual processes where you're going to have increased calls to the help desk for password resets because the redundant software lacks compatibility with your IGA solution. And you're also going to have increased requests for manual provisioning, deprovisioning. You're going to have more applications that need to be certified and additional access requests. Max, how should organizations prioritize investments?
It's a great question, Mike. When you think about prioritizing investments within the cybersecurity space, we typically recommend to clients a few steps. The first step is to understand your current state and your current costs. So it's important to understand what you're spending on software, what you're spending on infrastructure to support that software, as well as your operational costs. And, as you think through that, you also want to consider your ability to reprioritize your own resources to more valuable tasks. As an example, if you have engineers that are managing help desk tickets, resetting passwords and things like that, you might be able to reprioritize those folks to more valuable engineering tasks simply through automation and then reducing, that ticket load or that ticket count, and then repurposing those folks to more valuable activities, more aligned with their background. It's also important, as you're prioritizing your tasks, to think about your compliance and regulatory obligations. That could be GDPR, that could be SOX, that could be audits, that could be preparing for M&A activity and an audit associated with that. And as you think through those, it may be helpful to talk with your legal department in order to understand the potential penalties for your outside obligations. As an example, in the GDPR and privacy space, sometimes there have been very, very large fines levied against organizations. And so understanding the value or the potential damage that those regulations and their fines may cause is an important step in this. Next, it's important to take the items from 1 and 2, so your ongoing costs, your compliance and regulatory obligations, and build a model that's appropriate for your organization. Cybersecurity is a notoriously challenging place to measure risk, but there are some models out there that your organization may be able to use as a starting point in order to model your risk, model your costs, and understand where your priorities lie. One great example is the FAIR risk model, which was introduced in the book you see to the right here on the screen. And that's a great starting point where you can take your items like your ongoing costs, your regulatory and compliant risks relevant for your organization, and build a model that takes all of those things into consideration. It's also important to build consensus around that model. If you present a model that other folks don't agree with, you're going to have a challenging time using that to drive prioritization activities with the organization as a whole. So once you've begun to build that model, it's important to socialize that model and to rank your priorities using it. Lastly, once you've done that, then you can begin to pursue new opportunities. When the business comes to you and says, hey, we'd like to go and acquire this company, or hey, we are being acquired and we need to meet certain requirements, you can call out what are the risks of not making the investments you need to make to meet those needs. So that could be everything from penalties to non-compliance with regulations, or it also could be the business risk of passing on a possible acquisition because of inadequate security controls. And there are a few ways that organizations can leverage vendors, professional services, and other organizations in order to do this more easily. One great example is vendor BVAs, or business value assessments. Most cybersecurity vendors have their own ways of calculating the return on investment that you would get for a particular investment you make. So as an example here, One Identity has an ROI calculator that they use for each of the 3 major PAM, IGA, and access management products that they offer. It's important also to consider compatibility issues. Your investment may, if you choose to invest in multiple different security vendors, may result in additional costs to integrate some of those tools, or may even make integrations challenging or impossible. And lastly, it's important to build that business case. So once you've taken a BVA from a vendor or potential vendors that you're considering, considered compatibility, the ability to reprioritize your own resources, automation, each of these factors, it's important to build a strategic presentation or way of looking at this that can be shared with the board, can be shared with senior level executives, and it's really going to help to drive that case forward. And of course, most professional services firms will be able to take your vendor BVAs, your own risk model, and other factors, including their own pricing if you're using their services, and build that into an accurate business case. In our next slide here, we have some examples of some of the work that IC Consult has done, building a business case for organizations within our space. As you can see, a few key points that we've talked about here are being taken into consideration. That includes things like the ongoing software and infrastructure costs, replacement of existing systems, the ability to reprioritize operational resources from lower value tasks to higher value tasks. It's also important to notice here that we incorporate things like increasing year-over-year operational costs. It's not a safe assumption that your operational costs will stay static year-over-year. Year-over-year, typically we use roughly a 10% increase in operational costs. This could be everything from salaries, compensation, bonuses, power usage, depending on your business model. Lastly, it's important to accumulate your software services and investments over at least a 3-year period. Most software vendors are selling their products in 3-year deals. So it's important to understand that while your ROI on year one may not exceed, 100%, your ROI in future years may very well. So it's important to take all of these factors into consideration as you build your model and as you build your business case. Next, it's important to build that business case in a way that is user-friendly and easy to understand. Here we have an example from that same model where we presented to an organization's C-suite and executive management around why there's a need for an identity program. And as I mentioned before, it covers a lot of the different areas that we've talked about. So this includes operational savings, time savings, reprioritizing new folks, as well as gaining additional efficiency from folks getting appropriate access to do their job on day one. And then on the compliance side, ensuring that folks who leave your organization are losing their access, therefore reducing business risk and ensuring that your organization can operate as quickly as possible. This helps your cybersecurity organization be seen by the business as an enabler, crucial to ensuring that folks who start on day one have all the access they need appropriate to do their job and don't become discouraged as they spend weeks and weeks trying to get appropriate access. Lastly, it allows management to have better information. Good controls allow management to have good reporting and understand how the cybersecurity program is doing in meeting its KPIs. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for our presentation?
Thanks, Max. Yeah, we've got actually a few questions, and I think the first one I'm going to start with was diving a little deeper on the business case that you just showed. The customer asked that you quickly showed a business case. Can you go into a little bit more detail on the actual savings?
Sure, absolutely. So this was a business case that we put together for a client who was considering purchasing an IGA solution. So a lot of what you see here in terms of time saved, hours saved, dollars saved, is really focused on some of your classic IGA solution use cases, right? So automated provisioning, automated deprovisioning, certifications, things like that. And so we worked with the customer to build out an understanding from their help desk tickets, right? So from their ServiceNow ticket queue, an understanding of all of the various types of manual tasks that were being performed via ServiceNow tickets, right? And that really formed the foundation for this case, right? So we were able to say, okay, you spend, let's say, 20 minutes a ticket on each of a series of different provisioning tickets, another, 20 minutes a ticket on each of a series of deprovisioning tickets. There were also certifications that were done for numerous applications via Excel spreadsheets that were passed around, things like that. And so for each of those things, we were able to estimate both an hourly rate and an amount of time to resolve those things, and use that as the back end to build the slide that you see here. So that covered everything from operational savings, the time, the help desk, and other tier one sort of provisioning, deprovisioning tasks and groups were spending in resolving those tickets, and also to calculate that in terms of dollars, and in terms of and to present those things in a way that made sense to the board, right? So we're presenting not only the hard dollar savings, but also presenting some of the softer wins there as well, right? So that could be things like the ability to have folks have the correct access on day one, people having greater satisfaction with their job, those sorts of things. So tried to sort of cover the gamut there between technical and relatively hard cost savings, as well as some of the softer aspects that the companies experience with some of these software solutions as well.
Thank you, Max. I think this next question is for Michael. Michael, one of our customers asked, where should I start trying to identify areas where I can reduce costs in my cybersecurity organization without compromising my security?
Sure. What you want to do is start off, take an inventory of your applications. Many companies don't have that clear list because the business manages them instead of IT. It usually is an eye-opening experience to find out how many applications you do have instead of how many you thought you have. Once you have that list, you can identify your redundant software and processes, and then you can also look into ticketing systems that include approval workflows and automated fulfillment.
Were there any other questions there, Lee?
Yes. This one is for Michael as well. Thank you for answering the last one. The next question is, how do I determine which solutions are providing the most value to justify the costs? I know you showed the ROI calculator in the webinar, but where do you start to calculate the ROI?
Sure. So what you want to do is, consider the following, and, it's your software costs, which are your expenses related to acquisition, subscription, licensing of the IGA tool. Then you also want to look at your infrastructure costs. This is the expenditures related to, hardware, network, storage, data center facilities that will support the IGA system. And third, operational costs. This is your day-to-day, including staff salaries, bonuses, like Max said, training, system maintenance, and other running expenses. You also want to consider the ability to reprioritize your engineering resources by implementing the IGA solution to shift resources from operational tasks to engineering tasks. This drives innovation and improves efficiency. So to calculate the ROI, you want to take a long-term perspective and accumulate those costs over 3 years. This enables you to understand the cost implications and the potential return over a significant period. It also ensures you have a comprehensive view of the investment's value proposition.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to turn it back to Max. And Max, I was wondering if you could show the upcoming webinars, just so that our audience can see when they're happening. Thank you. And then the next question is for you, which is there a way to determine which manual processes would be most cost effective to replace with an IAM or an IAG automation solution?
Sure, absolutely. So I think it's important to recognize that sometimes that there is a certain level of legwork or manual work involved in actually figuring that out, right? So you can go to your ServiceNow system or to another system and collate all of the unique manual tasks that are being performed, and they may not be, contained in a single ITSM system or a single ticketing system, right? But you can, pull together a list of the manual tasks that could potentially be automated, and begin to put a time estimate, right? So depending on the task, you may have different folks at different levels involved in actually, you say provisioning access, performing a certification, deprovisioning access, right? So you need to take into account who's involved, right? How many people are involved in each step that you might consider automating, how much time they spend, and then what the value of their time is, right? So, an hour of tier 1 help desk might be cheaper than, say an hour of tier 3 help desk, right? But at the end of the day, what you need to do is calculate the time spent on any manual task you could automate, and then attach a dollar per hour rate to that time, and then you can go ahead and begin to calculate what your cost savings could be through automation. Hopefully that answered the question.
It did. Great to know. Thank you. Last question that I have is, what role do integrations play when selecting cybersecurity solutions?
Sure, absolutely. So I think obviously integrations are a big area of expense, within the cybersecurity space, certainly within the identity space. Whether it's your PAM solution, whether it's your IGA solution, whether it's your access management solution, you're likely going to be looking to integrate it with at least one, possibly a number of other systems, and not just endpoint applications, right? But actually applications within your cybersecurity program as well, right? So I'm sure you've been or seen cybersecurity programs where safes within a PAM solution can be automatically created, or new accounts can be automatically added to them, those sorts of automations, right? So I think integrations play a huge part of the total capital expense of any cybersecurity or InfoSec program. And it's important when you're assessing a solution to consider what integrations and connectors that solution is going to have, right? So if you already know that in a future state, you may want to integrate your IGA and PAM solution or your IGA and access management solution, it's important to consider that overall as you're considering your software investments, as you're considering operational investments, things like that, right? Because purchasing compatible software solutions, solutions that already have pre-made connectors, maybe even solutions that are going to market together or are part of a single platform, can save you a lot of money in the long run on those integrations, which you'll not only have to pay that initial capital expense for, but you'll also have to maintain over time as each of the solutions upgrades or goes through changes. So I would just, end by saying that overall, integrations are, of course, a large capital expense for most InfoSec programs.
Thank you, Max. That concludes our questions. It's always good to remind everyone when the next series starts and how to contact us for more information.
Yep, absolutely. So, as Lee mentioned, we have a number of upcoming webinars. July 26th, we'll be talking about compliance. August 9th about complexity, and August 23rd about compatibility. So in order to register, there's some contact information up on your screen, but hopefully you'll be able to join us for each of those upcoming webinars.